Hello, D-Rock here, UFirst Outdoors. Welcome to the channel. Hope you all are well. So today I'm going to do a video on some lures that work very well for me on Lake Powell. I'm just going to do this episode 1. I intend to make a few more episodes of this as I go along because I always, as a fisherman, you always know you've got piles of lures and bait stacked up, boxes of them. So there's lots to talk about, and I'm just going to do a few at a time, and the ones that really do well for me consistently I intend to highlight. So that being said, let's get started. So like I said, I'm going to only highlight a few because I don't want this to get too overloaded, and I'll pick 3 or 4 or whatnot. We'll just see how this goes. But my first go-to when I'm on Lake Powell are rattle traps. I love rattle traps, and I've used rattle traps in saltwater, freshwater. They do the job. On Lake Powell, I have a lot of success with this particular one, which the pattern is called Sunrise Perch, if I'm not mistaken, and also this one, which is a chrome with the blue back. As you can see, it's got a little red tint too. And another cool one that's worked very well, you know, they're all stuck together, of course, is this pattern here. It's some type of shad, I think. I can't remember, but that's done very well. As you can see, it's pretty beat up. And another cool thing is they're affordable lures. A lot of times, as you can see here, for instance, Walmart will have a clearance on them, $4, and I can just come through and clean house because these do get lost occasionally, but I like to have plenty of them on hand, and they work very well. And I like to stick with 1/4 ounce up to a 1/2 ounce. Those sizes work very well for me, and I like to troll them in various depths, from 10 feet of water to 30 to 40. They also come in handy if I'm going along and I see a slurp or a boil going on. Tossing these into the middle of them works very well, and you can reference some of the Powell fishing videos I've done just to notice that. Rattling away, baby. Cotton Cordell also makes their version of said rattle trap. As you can see, they're shaped a little differently. You noticed, just a bit, I guess you could say, more angular. I don't know if that's the correct term, but there is a difference. And still got that rattle, of course, but I still tend to lean more towards the actual rattle trap for my own preference, and you know, your miles may vary, of course. So I like to troll these at various speeds. I seem to have more luck at a faster troll, and it's usually between 2 and 2400 RPMs. I don't know how fast that is miles per hour because my speedometer doesn't work, but it's fairly fast, which tends to activate an aggressive strike from stripers and also smallmouth. So, and I've caught largemouth on these as well. I believe I've caught a bluegill. So they've worked on all species. Yeah, these really slay them at certain times. Okay, moving on. I also do very well with a curly tail plastic grub, and I prefer the 5-inch, and the single tail works very well for me. Double tail has worked, and I think you can go, I think there's a lure called the hula where you've got this stuff flowing off the top and 2 tails, but that's for another one. These work very well. I've absolutely destroyed the smallmouth on this white one in particular, and done very well on striper. And I've also caught walleye on this, not too frequently, but it has happened. And I prefer the baits made by Dry Creek. Reason being is they tend to hold up very well. So the smallmouths are very aggressive, and you can get a lot of use out of one of these made by Dry Creek. Seems that way to me anyway. As far as pairing it with the jig head, I like about an 1/8 ounce, such as this here, high vis color, chartreuse, bright orange or whatnot. And Oh, Rick's jigs, UV powered. These do very well. Striper, the hook's strong enough for smallmouth and largemouth. Stripers can bust up one of these pretty quick though, but this jig head pairs very well with this particular grub. So speaking of jig heads, we do bait fishing in the spring for stripers with cut anchovy. A lot of times I like to get that bait down really quick because we'll find the schools or whatnot and we want to get into the action super fast. So what I do is I'll use, this is a saltwater jig head, and I just get these from like Bass Pro or something, and they are very sturdy, 1/2 ounce chartreuse, a bright color. I can get down fast, and these hooks will hold up to multiple striper hits. It's just a more solid hook, beefier, and I prefer using this when bait fishing for striper. Like I said, it just gets down faster, it's sturdy, and they're not going to bust that hook off. And let me just reiterate again, these are saltwater jig heads, and they perform very well for bait fishing for striper. I do get some misses on them, but as you've seen in previous videos, we still load the cooler without a doubt. Moving right along. Now, this particular lure has absolutely devastated the smallmouth and striper, and we've caught walleye and large. I mean, it's just all across the board. Species cannot take it. They have to hit this. I love this particular lure. We use it and highlight this all the time while we fish on Lake Powell, and that's just the Ned Rig. And I really like the Z-Man baits. They are very durable. They last for multiple fish, and one in particular style and color that works really well is the mud minnow. Man, this thing just absolutely busts them out there. And Z-Man also makes specific Ned Rig jig heads. These are what, 1/15 ounce. You can see they're a little different than, say, a rounded jig head. But if you don't have these tend to, that little spine that keeps the plastic tends to break off fairly quickly. This particular hook's not too durable. So if you run out of these, just using the standard jig head with this, with the Ned Rig, works just as fine. Seen equally successful. And then here is the mud bug colored Ned Rig with one of the actual Ned Rig jig heads on it. As you can see, God, we just devastate the smallmouth with these. And like I said, we've also caught striper, walleye, all species. And another thing I'll mention, this has actually worked well also, and that's just taken like a stick bait. I use Yum dingers, and we've actually just cut it into thirds and use little portions with the jig head through that, and that's just smoked them as well. All this worked very nicely throughout the spring and summer into early fall. And there you have it. So those are a few lures that have worked very well for us on Lake Powell. Very successful. Hopefully this helps. I know I've had a lot of questions back when I was beginning to fish Lake Powell, and I'll continue to put up videos such as this as well, just to you know, highlight certain things and go over more baits, lures, tips, gear, whatever. So appreciate you watching Tight Lines. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. We have more fishing videos along the way, more adventure as well. We have lots of plans. Thanks for sticking with us. So I've linked some Lake Powell videos in the description below, and I put some up top there. Have a look. I recently did a winter fishing trip for striper. I did very well. Check out that video as well. Take care, folks. We'll see you next time. D-Rock out. Adios.